Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody, and this is my friend Michael. And today we're going to be going over an extremely popular topic, which is how to get started hacking with the Raspberry Pi.
Nice.
Yeah. So the reason why this is popular is Raspberry Pis are really cheap. They've been around for quite some time, and they have an amazing community built around them, where basically there's just lots and lots of people who have tried out projects with the Raspberry Pi, documented their experiences, and are willing to lend some help. And I find that to be really important for beginners getting into a project. If you get started with something that has absolutely no documentation, it can be a really frustrating experience. So I love the Raspberry Pis because they're generally around anywhere between like $5 to $10 to get started with like a really cheap one.
That is so adorable. Sorry.
Yes, the cat's really cute. We need to get blinders for you that attach to the hat. I can 3D print some.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, these things generally cost between $5 to $10 for the smallest variety,
Yeah.
the Raspberry Pi Zero W.
Although the $5 one is like basically useless.
You can't. Well, no. You can do some pretty sophisticated attacks. You can do the poison tap attack by standing a Camcar.
Oh yeah, but like so the $5 one just doesn't have the Wi-Fi.
Right.
So it's like for $5 extra.
For $5 extra you can get it. Keep in mind that Raspberry Pis are a little tricky. You actually need some accessories in order to actually get started with one. So let's say you want to get a Raspberry Pi. Well, it starts at around $35 or so. But then if you want to actually run it, you need a proper power supply. Today, mine was crashing constantly. It was because it was plugged into my MacBook Pro through a sketchy dongle. So the problem was just power. And the Raspberry Pi 4 also, the first generation, has a problem where if you don't get the right power supply, it sometimes can't accept some of the more, like this MacBook Pro cable, it couldn't use it. So just keep in mind that you need to buy some extra things with Raspberry Pi. An SD card that is pretty fast. A micro SD card that's pretty fast. If you get a slow one, your system's going to be slow, and flashing it is going to be slow. A keyboard so you can interface with this thing. An HDMI cable so you can connect it to some sort of interface. There's other things that you'll need in order to get started with this, but in general, these start pretty cheap, and they run Linux. So, Michael, what's the difference between this ESP8266 and this Raspberry Pi when it comes to hacking?
I would probably say just like an order of magnitude computing power is the basic difference. Like they can both do Wi-Fi hacking. Like I don't think the ESP can capture handshakes.
Wait. Stefan and I will get on that.
It can de-auth and do stuff like reconnaissance type scans. But the Pi, if you're going to do like any kind of Wi-Fi hacking, and in reality, like anyone that's like, oh, hey, I want to get into hacking, I want to start a Linux machine or something like that, this is always what I recommend, is just get like a Raspberry Pi. Mike, try that first. If you like that, then you can go, build or dedicate your laptop to Kali Linux. But like this is a really good cheap option. Although I do still think, like you were alluding to, that $35 price tag is a little deceiving, because once you get all those peripherals added on, it's like $80 or more. Especially like the first time you start out, because like then you're like, well, I don't technically need a micro SD card adapter, but I don't have a device around here to program the micro SD card, so now you have to have something for your computer to accept that, and then so you just spiral into the dongle world where you're like, oh god, I need 20 dongles to program this thing.
Well, that's a very long answer.
Yeah.
And I would say that the primary difference between these two when it comes to hacking is that one of them is a microcontroller and the other one is a full-on computer. So it has an output for HDMI, it has 4 USB type A ports, it has audio jack out, so you can make this a smart speaker. And the Raspberry Pi also has 2 output HDMI outputs. So you could plug it into 2 separate monitors just from this, which is pretty cool for just a little computer that costs so little. So if you have worked with a computer before, I'm assuming you have since you're watching this, then this is pretty much what you should be used to. This has a form of storage, like a hard drive, which is just the micro SD card. It boots up an operating system with a graphical user interface, and it's very, very similar to every other computer you've used. This is a microcontroller. It's cool to program, but we need a computer running an operating system generally to compile software and then flash it to this device. So what that means is that this doesn't run an operating operating system. We can't use it in the same way. We can't really run programs on this the same way we can with this. With this, we need to figure out what we want it to do in advance and then program that all into the microcontroller, and then it pretty much just does one thing. Whereas this is much more like my MacBook Pro, for example, because you can put in a different, an operating system that's appropriate for what you want it to do. It'll boot up, and then you can run various different programs on it. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today, only we're going to be using Kali Linux, which is kind of the gold standard for people who want to get started with hacking. And we're going to be starting this up using Kali Linux, although this is a Raspberry Pi 4, which is then a little case with a fan on it. We're going to be using a Raspberry Pi 3B, I believe, because, all right, I do a lot of Wi-Fi hacking, and a little known fact about the Raspberry Pi is that you don't need to get a separate wireless network adapter to start hacking with the Raspberry Pi.
It supports monitor mode?
It supports monitor mode. So you can do deauthing and you can do monitor mode using a Raspberry Pi, which means you can get and crack handshakes on the Raspberry Pi. And we have done this at the RSA conference, and it was really, really cool. So because of this, if you want to get started with Wi-Fi hacking, there's usually a Wi-Fi dongle or a wireless network adapter that you have to buy that goes along with it that's about $35. It's like the cost of the Pi again. So what's cool about this is you don't need to get anything else to start doing signals intelligence stuff, running Kismet. Our friend Alex Lynn has used this to be able to create something that like looks for creeps following him and like is able to use Wi-Fi in devices. So it's really, really cool that you can use the Wi-Fi card that's built into the Raspberry Pi to do a lot of stuff that normally you would have to pay extra for.
And that sounds like it'd be a great like network implant or something even. Like
Yes.
I could imagine you easily, like if you were like pen testing or something and you got access to an office, like you could just plug that into the Ethernet and then have that generate a Wi-Fi, like do Wi-Fi scans and then generate like an access point that you could log into and download all the data off of it.
Oh yeah, because it's a full Linux system. So anything you can do on a full Linux system, you can do on this within reason. If you're going to start cracking on it, like it will do it. It's just going to take a while.
Yeah.
So I recommend the Raspberry Pi 3B just because that wireless card is particularly well suited to working with evil Wi-Fi stuff. The Raspberry Pi 4, I've gotten it to work. The Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, I believe I've gotten it to work, but for the purpose of this guide, I experienced some crashing and other stuff when I actually did try it. So I recommend that if you don't already have a Raspberry Pi, I recommend a 3B, but if you already have a 3B Plus or a 4, then you should be good to go. If you have something older than that, then I'm not totally sure if it's going to work. A Raspberry Pi 2 actually will work, but it's too slow to do certain things like phishing and stuff like that. It just doesn't have the processing power to convincingly do things like reroute traffic and serve as a router because it's just not fast enough itself.
Did they actually change the Wi-Fi chipset between the 3 and the 4?
I believe they did. Well, no, between the 3 and the 4? Yes, they did.
Okay, so that's why it doesn't work the same.
Yeah, because this chip has 5G. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so if it's fully working, then I believe you could possibly do 5G attacks. We maybe will, if you guys like that idea, 5G Wi-Fi attacks with the Raspberry Pi, then yeah, tell us you like it, retweet it, and let us know in the comments.
Not to go too deep down a rabbit hole, but like what 5G attacks work and like don't work? Like what can you...
All the stuff you can do on 2.4G, you can do on 5G.
Okay, so you can capture handshakes and do stuff like that?
Yep.
Nice.
There's no difference. There's no difference when it comes to the tools that will work. It's just whether or not they're written for 5G, so they have the right channels built in, and whether or not your hardware supports it. But like Kismet, like B-Side NG even, I think will work on 5G.
That's pretty cool.
And AirGetIn's also really well tooled for doing 5G as well. They have it all built in. So if you want to get started with that, we can run AirGetIn on our Raspberry Pi. It's not installed by default, but we can install it, and then we can take advantage of 5G attacks. I'm not 100% sure if the card supports 5G for attacking, but we should try it at some point. Again, let us know if you're interested. We'll do another one. So for the scope of this one, what we're going to be doing is basically just getting set up with the normal Kali Linux tooling. And this has changed since I wrote a guide about it a couple years ago. And that guide got really, really popular, but now there's a bunch of comments that are saying that certain things don't work. And when I tried it out today, they are right. There are some things that don't work. For example, the default password is different. So you might go crazy trying to log into this thing if you were following a guide from too long ago. So I know that this works as of, well, today. As of this broadcast, it should be working. And yes, so this should be a pretty good guide on getting set up on the Raspberry Pi for hacking. Now, all right, so we're going to be using our Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, but on the Raspberry Pi 4, just an example, Michael, what do you think the first step is to getting this set up?
Oh, you mean just like general Raspberry Pi
General
setup?
Raspberry Pi setup. Yep.
Take the micro SD card, like wherever you have,
Mhm.
and flash it.
Yes.
Using your favorite program. I'm gonna stick it in here, and that's like the very first thing you have to do.
Yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to my screen then, and we'll just get started with that. All right, so first we're going to download Kali Linux from the Kali Linux website. Let me see if I have it up still. I hope I do. So I'm just going to
So they make a custom ARM image for the Raspberry
So don't
Pi?
download the general one. Look for the one that's specifically for the Raspberry Pi. Today, in this example, I am using the 64-bit Raspberry Pi image, which is new.
So that's an interesting note. They seem to have a bunch of other like single board computers on there, so you don't have to you could use. I think some of those are more powerful than the Pi. Some are just cheaper. Less supported ones from like China and stuff.
Also, just some feedback, Raspberry Pi, or not, sorry, offensivesecurity.com, when referring to your Raspberry Pi packages, can you make it a little easier to differentiate what the difference between these is? These are, I have the Raspberry Pi, and then 2, 3, 4, and then version 1.2, 3, 4. I get it. After some study, like I was able to understand this, but like just being like, which do I download? It's like, okay, I have a Raspberry Pi 3. I guess this is only for like the original Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, that's the way I would interpret it.
Yeah, but and then like I also found that this one crashed. It got into a condition where it said that it wasn't able to access the root profile. So that one didn't work, and then I had to download this one instead. So if you experience some problems, the 64-bit one is the one that we're testing today. I've gotten it to work, and it seems very stable on the Raspberry Pi 3B, which is what I'm testing it on, but it also should work just fine on the 4 and the 3B Plus, which is what I recommend using it on. The Raspberry Pi 2 is fine, but you're getting a little slow, and you won't be able to do some attacks that are fun.
Yeah.
Cool. So, all right, so we'll download this. I recommend using a torrent, and then also make sure to check the hash.
How do you check that for anyone that doesn't know? Is it simple or is it time-consuming?
It's pretty simple. I just kind of forget how to do it on a Mac OS because I've been on a different system. Let's do wow, caps lock. I think that
I promise I'm not angry. It's just caps lock.
Can I just call this? Sometimes Mac OS is great with just like making stuff easy like that, but also often not. Shaw 256. Is that a thing I can do? No. Yeah,
don't worry
I've done a guide on this. I've already forgotten it because I'm not thinking about that right now. But yeah, you should generally check to make sure. I already downloaded this, and I used a program that also verified the hash, and I compared it. So generally, you want to make sure that the program you're getting is the one that the person who put it out intended. So when you're using a third-party torrent website, for example, it's a really good idea to make sure that the torrent wasn't assembled with a little something extra. So before you flash this, just go ahead and make sure that the SHA value matches that. Cool. Okay, so next up, we're going to use a program called Etcher. And I really like this because it works especially well with Linux. It is terrible for flashing for Windows, so don't use it for that. But for Linux, it's great. So what you'll do is...
You know, you say that, but I had always used it on my Windows machine, and I didn't have any problems.
Yeah, it doesn't work anymore.
Really?
Yeah, specifically the newest version of Windows or something broke something critical, and now you have to use some other dumb thing for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought I could just flash Windows images, and it's like, oh, we've detected a Windows image. Like, let's not do that because it's not going to work.
You mean for flashing an image of Windows? I thought you were saying Etcher working on Windows.
Oh, yeah. You can't flash Windows images.
Yeah.
You can use Windows to run Etcher to flash Linux images, but you can't use any type of Etcher to flash Windows images for running a Windows computer.
That's why I love recommending Etcher, is because basically regardless of what platform you're on, it's going to work, and it has a really nice interface. Stupid simple, automatically detects like the micro SD card or any other like USB drive or anything you have plugged in.
Yeah, so recently Etcher was purchased by some company. Actually, it looks like a whale purchased Etcher, so that's cool. I don't know how to pronounce their name though, so I'm not going to say it, but thanks for purchasing Etcher, I guess. All right, so here we go. We have our image now, which is auto-selected. But I can go and I can change which image I'm searching for. This is also cool because it can select the zipped image file, actually. Yeah, it can like see through it, which is a little weird. It
actually took me an embarrassing amount of time to discover that because I would always extract it and then load it in. And then one day I just accidentally clicked on the zip file and I was like, oh, hey, it makes life easier.
It certainly does. Okay, so I'm in the position where I have this plugged into what's also the HDMI cable, so it might cut out for a second if I plug this, unplug and plug it in, but I'm gonna bravely try it. So hold on. No.
No.
This is a unforgiving dongle.
Having dongle problems.
Oh my god. Oh, okay,
Yes,
it worked. Yes.
miracle.
All right, so this is a slow micro SD card, and I want to show you guys the consequences of using a slow micro SD card. All right, we have our thing selected. We're gonna flash this image, the 64-bit Kali Linux, to our SD card, our micro SD card. I'm gonna flash. It'll ask for my password. It's gonna send it to this whale, and then there we go. Okay. So it's flashing, and we're flashing at like 5 megabytes a second,
wow,
and we
that
got
is kinda
37 minutes until we're done.
Okay, that's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
normally doesn't take that long.
So if you have a fast micro SD card, like the one we're using in the Raspberry Pi right now, then it will take about 10 minutes, sometimes less, to flash all of this. So I highly recommend going for a faster micro SD card. You'll see increased speeds, and also if something goes wrong, for example, one thing that will kill your Raspberry Pi is if you're updating it as root and then you unplug the power, that is going to mess it up. And it might not be able to recover, and you might just have to reflash it. And if it takes you like 20, 30 minutes to do that every time, like this is boring. Like you guys wouldn't want to watch this live stream if it was just us like, you know, just like talking crap like while we wait for this to flash for the next 30 minutes.
No, this is definitely the kind of thing I recommend people like go get coffee, get a snack, come back, and it should be done kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so
especially since it flashes it and then it has to go back and it like double checks to make sure it flashed.
yeah, so after this it has to verify it, where it basically checks the hash and makes sure that it flashed correctly, there's no problems. This isn't a security hash, so again, you should check the hash yourself. But all right, so this is the Raspberry Pi. Let's assume it's done. We would take the SD card, or the micro SD card out.
Okay, so question. I know with like Raspbian, if you want to enable SSH, you have to like unplug the micro SD card and then plug it back in and put in like a blank file that it says SSH.
Wait, I'm sorry. Explain this to me again. What do you have to do? Why?
Okay, so like if you want by default like SSH enabled, so like
so if you want to connect headlessly, okay, so to
or if you wanted to connect via Wi-Fi, you have to have the WPA supplicant file.
Yeah.
That you add. Do you have to do those similar things with Kali?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
I guess we'll find out. Let's just see if the SSH is open when we connect to it.
Sure.
But I mean, I imagine yes, the procedure to have it automatically connect to a network will be the same.
Yeah. Generally, I think the supplicant file because for me, that's always something I just had on my desktop to drag to any Raspberry Pi build because it just contains like your Wi-Fi network name and password.
Oh, useful. I just always connect mine to Ethernet, or just like connect to small. Network. But okay, so let's say that this is done flashing. So now we'll have a Raspberry Pi that is successfully flashed with Kali Linux, and we'll plug it into power. We'll plug it into a keyboard and a mouse, which we've done, and then we'll go ahead and plug it into a screen. So let's go ahead and switch over to that. And I imagine it's saving power. All right, so if you are trying to connect to a Raspberry Pi, and this is your first time, and you've read my really old guide on it, you're going to type in root and tour.
Yeah, that's like the default, like all Linux password.
Yep, so not anymore.
Why would they even change that?
Because it's like the default Linux password. They wanted to change it to something that was less specific to every type of Linux.
Yeah.
So, well, less general to every type of Linux. So by doing this, then it means that like now the default password to Kali is different from the default password to Debian. And
because so much more security from that change.
A little bit. I mean, at least they're not included in like the default pool that will hit literally every Linux operating system
until it gets added.
I mean, of course it'll get added eventually, but you just see like why they wouldn't want it lumped in with like the most common like 2 default passwords ever.
Yeah.
So it's not like a huge change in security, but whatever, it still helps. So now the default password and everything has changed. So now it's Kali. And actually
all lowercase?
Lowercase, and then Kali again.
Much security.
Yep. Wait, what? K-A-L-I? Whoa.
Did you change the password?
No, I didn't. We might have to reboot it. which is fine. I'm not doing anything as root right now, I don't think, so if I need to reboot it, I kind of wanted to show that anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So it's going to go black for a second. Sorry, guys, but you'll get to see the whole rainbow sequence of the Raspberry Pi booting up. So let's pretend that we're booting up for our first time. And hopefully it'll let us in this time. Yeah, so we get a rainbow. If it stays like this, you have a problem. So then it'll go ahead and run. And usually it takes a little bit to power up the like wireless radio and stuff. It's also checking the disk to make sure that I didn't damage it when I unplugged it, and checking the file integrity and all that. And it generally will try to fix it if there's anything too bad. Otherwise, we might have to FS check this one. Or rather, it might have to go FS check itself, because we have to run it in another computer. So after this is done checking itself, then it should... Oh, this is also, if it takes forever to raise its wireless interface, you might have a problem with your power supply. I found that it takes like a really long time. Oh, good, we're in emergency mode. So if we're in emergency mode...
Oh yeah, wasn't this a problem you were encountering earlier?
No. So the other one boot looped into emergency mode. This one I unplugged while it was, I guess, doing something.
Yeah.
Link is not ready. Link is not ready. Yeah, so it's trying to do... Oh, wait, no, you're right. Cannot open access to console. The root account is locked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually is a problem. So can I do... Press enter to continue. It looks like it's trying to start up. But that's interesting. So, okay, so just to diagnose what happened, we had a Raspberry Pi, default credentials was working fine. We brought it in, plugged it in. Suddenly, all of a sudden, it wouldn't let us log back in with the right credentials. And then as soon as we rebooted it, it now doesn't have access to the console.
That's not normal at all.
No, that's not normal at all.
Yeah.
So,
it's doing things.
Yeah, it's doing things. It seems like it might be like a transient problem, or it seems like it's either that or it's like a terrible problem, I guess.
Yeah, maybe it's just slow booting up. Because there's a lot to the software here, right? So.
And it's also not running on the newest Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
So Kali works just fine now that we've rebooted it. Cool. Like, that's great.
When all else fails, turn it off and on again.
Yep,
right?
that's the first rule of engineering. Well, first is hit it, and then second is turn it off and on.
No, okay, yeah.
So, okay, all right, we're in Kali Linux. It's gonna get like sexier at a certain point, and that's when you know it's done booting.
Wait,
it shows,
have that
boom. See?
Yeah, we got the sexy dragon there.
Yeah. Well, no, before it was not as like wavy or whatever. It got curves. So you can see this. I'm actually really used to navigating these without a mouse. So I'll just like hit the Windows key, and it'll open that, and I'll type in terminal, and there we go. So one of the first things we can do is make sure that this is up to date. I kind of don't want to do that just because it's going to take up well, I guess we can see. So let's go over here and see if it offers up the ability to connect anything. Presentation mode, I don't care. What's this? What's that?
No, if you do a network scan, will this show up as like a Kali machine?
Well, it's not connected to anything.
Oh no.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, because I was gonna say, because one of the problems I would encounter when I'm working on a Pi is oftentimes maybe you just have your laptop and you don't have a monitor, mouse, and keyboard around with you. So that's why I was asking about SSH enabled by default earlier, because a lot of times it's a lot easier to just SSH in, especially if you're mainly just doing terminal stuff.
I'll connect to a different one. This one. Come on, give me the password dialog. No? Yes. But all right, so as soon as we connect it to, so this is really easy to connect to the internet. We can either plug in an Ethernet cable, or we can use the onboard Wi-Fi chip to just connect to Wi-Fi. I think this one works.
Yeah,
so,
it's connected.
All right, so if I do ping
1.1,
I know what address. Operation not permitted. So you might notice some changes. Why can't I do that? Well, what happens if I run ifconfig? Command not found. Oh my god, Kali's broken. What if I aircrack ng? Did I spell that right?
Hey,
aircrack ng works. Okay,
what?
It works. So let's do airmon ng. That's included in the aircrack package. It's not there.
I don't understand.
Neither did I. So we are not the root user. So as a result, we don't apparently have access to a bunch of random tools. So if we want to become the root user, then we can actually access the tools that are there. But for example, if I type sudo...
Yeah, can't you just sudo all your commands? Sudo airmon ng?
It's going to ask me the password, which is Callie. And look, it's there.
Okay.
So all this stuff is actually there. It's just lurking beneath the surface. It's really weird to me that, like, you know, when you first start using this, to a beginner anyway, they're just like, all this shit's broken.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like mad because like it doesn't quite work out of the box the way it used to. So like they really made some changes in terms of like how this is locked down. Originally, you were just like root by default. And like people would always criticize, you know, running root by default because it means that if you pick up any zero-day exploit like over the air or something like that, there have been zero-day exploits before that rely on Wi-Fi flaws in Wi-Fi chips to introduce code to the system. So if you're doing that and you're running root, then you really, you know, have the possibility of a lot of damage being done. Also, if you're running a program that's intercepting packets, you never know what's going to happen. So, you know, running Wireshark as root, like there's a lot of warnings about that. So, you know, having the entire system by default root, probably maybe, you know, for a beginner is easy, but not the best idea. And also look at how easy it is to bypass. Sudo su.
Yeah, but I still feel like a lot of newbies, especially if you're following a guide particularly, I can't tell you how many comments I've seen where people just don't realize that they need to add sudo in front of it.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, here's a solution, sudo su.
Yeah, so
That's
that'll
it, we're done.
permanently log you in as or no, it'll for this session.
For this session, I am now root. And
Yeah.
it's kind of better to like make yourself root when you need to be rather than making yourself root all the time.
Right, that makes sense.
All right, so let's try that command again, ifconfig. That's supposedly not their command. It's bullshit, right? It was totally there. And in fact, I'm going to make this like bigger.
Yeah, I'm just gonna write that in all my guides in the future. Just very first command. If you're not already sudo, just
Yeah, okay, so we can see that here's our wireless card. We're connected to a wireless network, and it totally does exist, so that's great. So what can we do on Kali Linux? Well, pretty much anything. I'm actually going to move this over here.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is, for all intents and purposes, a full Kali install, right? It has, like, all the tools. So anything you could do on a Kali Linux laptop, you could do on the Raspberry Pi, albeit with a little less horsepower behind the screen.
Yes. So here we can do, our first command should always be apt update. So now that we're root, we don't need to sudo it. So apt update is going to make sure we have all the latest versions of the packages that we're running. Now, a problem that might come up is if you're trying to if you download a package, it's going to be the most recent version. It's going to rely on the most recent version of the libraries, probably, that are available for whatever tools it's depending on. So if you try to run a hacking tool and you're relying on older versions of the libraries, you're going to run into bugs, and some of the tools you're trying to use, while they're fully updated, are not going to work. So in order for your system to know what packages have been updated and what needs to be updated, you need to run the apt update after you connect to Wi-Fi or Ethernet. So here, let's see.
And you know, you mentioned it earlier, but I think this is another important reason why you want a fast micro SD card.
Yes.
It's just updating faster, doing all this sort of stuff. You don't want the bottleneck to be your micro SD card.
It crawls. If you have like a really slow one, it just absolutely drags when you have to do installations and stuff. So yeah, getting a fast micro SD card is a really good idea. Now, Michael brought up a good point while we're waiting for this to finish, which is if you don't have access to maybe a monitor or something, it's possible to set these up so that you can just remotely connect to them from your computer. Now, one easy way of doing it is just plugging it into Ethernet, and then it'll automatically connect. But another way you can do that is configure it to connect to Wi-Fi by going into a configuration file after it's done flashing, and basically putting in the information so that as it boots up, it automatically connects back to a network, and then you can just basically log into it. There we go. And that's called running it headless, which means you don't need a monitor or like a head on it in order to see what's going on. So here we see there's a bunch of stuff that could be updated. If I want to start a very long command, I can run, do you know what it is?
Apt-get upgrade?
Yeah. It's just app now.
App.
Yeah, they got rid of get.
What?
Because like, who cares?
Reasons? Okay.
They give brevity.
Yeah.
They got rid of a third of it. So it's 155 megabytes of stuff that needs to be updated on this Raspberry Pi in order for it to be fully updated. But trust me, it is worth it. And you probably want to be connected to, you know, like Ethernet
Yeah.
while you're doing this. But once this is done, you'll know that your Raspberry Pi running Kali Linux is fully updated with all the libraries and everything that it needs to make sure it doesn't crash or experience any other behaviors. If you have a problem with your program, the first damn thing the developer is going to ask you to do, if you like ask them for
Update
help,
and
is
upgrade.
update and upgrade. And you're going to be embarrassed when it turns out that that fixes it. I was
Yeah.
when it happened multiple times, and I was yelling at some dude about his code not working. He's like, "Have you tried update upgrade?" I was like,
Of course
and
I
like,
have.
tried it. And I was like, of
Try.
course. And I was like, and I was just like, I was about to hit send. It's like, I should probably actually try it. And then I tried it, and it worked.
Yeah.
So just be aware that like this process, while painful, we're at 4%, and I've been stalling for like a good minute now. Is gonna take 24 minutes in order to
Yeah.
fully. Well, no.
I think this is also an important distinction to make between the 3 and the 4 Pi, is that the Ethernet is actually, I think, limited to 100 megabit on the 3, whereas on the 4 it's actually full gigabit Ethernet. So that could make a real difference. And I haven't done it myself, but from what I understand, you can actually, with the most recent Pis, attach an SSD, a solid-state hard drive, and you can actually boot from that. So that could even be faster potentially than a micro SD card.
Cool.
Especially if you're going to use this more regularly.
All right. So how much time do we have left? Do you think?
We need to go for about 10-15 more minutes.
Ooh. All right. Well, I don't want to spend that 10 or 15 minutes updating this Raspberry Pi. That sounds boring. So let's cancel.
Control C.
It's gonna. Oh, by the way, if I were to unplug the Pi right now, it would be so angry at me. I would basically probably have to have it go FS check itself, because it would basically corrupt like parts of the Raspberry Pi, like as logged in as root while it was updating, and it hates that. So let me just say, working with the Raspberry Pi, you want to make sure that you have a stable power cable that is not wiggling around and not going to disconnect suddenly, because it hates being disconnected when it's updating as root. It really doesn't like that. So if you unplug the Raspberry Pi, you run the risk of corrupting the SD card anyway, and you might just have to flash it. Make sure to frequently back up any projects you're working on this. I cannot stress that enough. Before we do anything with the Raspberry Pi, realize there's always the capacity to fry your work. So back up your SD cards. Always make sure to do that, because if you do something really precious on it, you're going to be disappointed if suddenly, the power cable wiggles out and you totally make it so you have to reformat your SD card. There's no other way to boot it.
And 2 additional notes there too is definitely with the power supply, make sure it's rated for like 2.5 amps, particularly if you're going to be plugging in any additional devices, like if you want to scan extra channels or whatever, or have an external Wi-Fi antenna and you're going to have an adapter, definitely use the right rated power supply. And additionally, I think they actually make a UPS hat for the Pi, an uninterruptible power supply that's like got a little li-poly battery attached to it and stuff. So like if you're legit super concerned, that is something that you can look into.
Yeah, absolutely. And wow, there's a lot of attacks here. I'm just looking at all the things that are available. We have Wireshark, so we can do Wireshark stuff. That might be fun. We have Metasploit. We have the Metasploit framework built in. Aircrack. Is Bettercap here? Lame. That's a little sad. Let's see if we can install it. apt install Bettercap.
Oh, that's going to take a while, isn't it?
I don't know. It's a pretty beefy installation, but let's see. The connection speed isn't so much the problem. It's just like how fast it can install it. I just want to see, this is, okay, 20 megabytes. So Bettercap is a great tool to run on the Raspberry Pi. You can very effectively use even an older Raspberry Pi as a tool to snoop on connections in a network and even do some like spooky DNS spoofing and all that stuff.
So for people that may not be as familiar, what does Bettercap do?
Bettercap is the Swiss Army knife of Wi-Fi hacking. That is, I believe, verbatim their description on their website.
Their tagline, okay. Cool.
And I could use some more stickers, Bettercap team.
Hint, hint, cough, cough,
Yeah.
nudge, wink, wink.
There's spaces. But yeah, so Bettercap allows you to do all this great stuff with Wi-Fi. They were one of the first ones to implement the PMKID attack, which, okay, I am getting into jargon. You're excited, but no one knows what that means. Yeah. Okay, so if you're attacking a Wi-Fi network, or if you're attacking an Ethernet network, there's a couple ways you can throw rocks at it. You can do it from the inside, or you can do it from the outside. Bettercap does both. it's able to stand outside of a Wi-Fi network and grab all the stuff you need to try to break into it. And then once you're inside of that network, it lets you do all the spooky stuff that really like turns the tables on the person that's in there and basically lets you take control of the Wi-Fi connection or the Ethernet connection and really take over the entire network. It says it's done.
Oh, hey, that wasn't too bad.
I know, right? Let's see if it works.
Now, should we
Hey!
run this on our actual network?
I mean, it's on our actual network, so let's buck, rock, and truck. Help. All right, so we've got net.pro.
That's a lot of not running.
What? Oh, yeah. So when we start out, it's not running anything. So let's do...
Oh, or so these like services.
Start net, net, oops, dot recon?
Yeah, net's really hard to spell.
Wait, why? Oh, net.recon start. What?
Denied.
All right. Oh, on. Sorry. Net.recon on.
See, why can't we just like standardize some of this stuff?
Okay, so now when we type help, we've got one service running. Let's do the next one. Net.sniff on. All right, we got some more stuff going on. How about net?
So what are these services you're actually starting?
On. So I'm starting to creep on the network.
Spy,
And basically what
spy,
I'm doing is
spy.
I'm listening to traffic that's not supposed to be for me, and I'm starting to pick up things. So if I type net.show, hey, I have a list of all the targets that have been located on the network by the Raspberry Pi. I see myself. I see my Dell computer, which is not actually a Dell computer.
I love that it's labeled Dell and then identified
And then it's like
as
clearly
Apple.
Apple, yeah. So typically I spoof my MAC address, but this time I didn't. Here we can also see there's traffic going through. We can see that this is intercepting traffic that is coming from my MacBook. So it's getting queries for different domains, which is pretty funny. We can also see your Hoid Aspire is also being detected on the network. So we're really creeping pretty hard on the network right now. So we'll type help. And we can see we're not even using a tiny amount of the different weapons we have available.
Yeah, no, that is a real Swiss Army knife there, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's do ARP spoofing, huh?
Sure.
ARP.spoof on.
So what's ARP?
ARP spoofing is going to mess this network up from the inside. It's basically going to lie to every single device on the network and be like, hey, guess what? I'm the router. You got to listen to me, and I'm the boss. And they're just like, I'm a stupid computer. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to agree with you. So now all these computers are putting their stupid traffic through this Raspberry Pi because they think it's the best because it says so.
Huh. So there's no like certificate kind of signing schemes or anything that can be implemented on the network to protect against
There
that?
probably is all sorts of stuff if people would actually like spend the money on it, but because people don't care about that,
that's
they want
like
fast
enterprise stuff.
Yeah, so like now, you know, I'm on Wi-Fi with this. Let's see if I can go to URL. No, don't go to my website. I'm just gonna don't go to my screen.
Okay.
In URL HTTP. All right, so I'm going to try to go to a website, and I just want to see if we can capture it with this Raspberry Pi. Or if I have any connection. Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm going to just go to this random middle school website that I hope doesn't have... Oh, they have HTTPS.
Oh,
what a bunch of nerds. Oh, but you can see it. Okay, you can see what website I'm going to in real time.
That's Creeper McCreeperson.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to find one that doesn't have HTTPS. Yeah, here we go. Now you can see everything I'm doing. So let me log into this middle school that hates security. And, wait, no, that one doesn't have a login. Let's do this middle school that hates security. I have to say I really love working with insecure login forms because Bettercap, I think, also structures it to show you, yeah, we can log in. Let's log in.
Hey now.
Let us absolutely log into this sketchy website. Username and password. So my username is... and my password is... Let's see if we can submit this and capture it using our Raspberry Pi. Boom. I've submitted my login. Has it gotten it? Invalid credentials. How dare you, sir?
Yeah.
I am a member.
I thought we would see that, but
It doesn't
maybe
always
I
work.
missed it.
There is a lot of output going on, and we also might not be. Don't ever
No.
save that login, please.
Yeah, we got a pretty busy network
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on here.
Yeah, so we're capturing a lot of stuff here. So I wouldn't be totally surprised. And also, here's the thing. The Raspberry Pi isn't like a supercomputer. So there are some things, null byte. There are some things
Nice.
that it might get hung up on if it's routing too much traffic. So right now I'm attacking like a lot of different devices that don't deserve this.
Yeah.
So because we have all these other people on the network, this little computer is really probably a little bit stressed with how much it's handling and how many different, oh yeah, see, it just loaded this. So we're able to see some traffic. I didn't see us capture the credentials, but that's okay because I know we can, and I'm able to see pretty
Windows
much everything.
Update is HTTP.
Oh yeah, isn't that great?
That sounds like a flaw.
Oh yeah, no, you're just like, oh, someone's like downloading a Windows request that happens to just be in plain text. Like that's great. Like hope I'm not. You can also basically, I can stop everyone's connection at a moment's notice. So I can
Yeah.
use the Raspberry Pi to poison this connection from the inside and just stop forwarding the stuff. I'm just like, no, nobody gets mail. Like
Oh,
you send traffic out through me. I return stuff when I feel like it. Right now I don't feel like it, so you don't get any traffic at all. Which is hilarious and
Yeah.
basically means that, you know, if you are on this network, someone could connect using this Raspberry Pi and just take control of your network completely.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of one of my other favorite Raspberry Pi projects, the Pi-hole, which acts as a DNS server on your local network. And you can totally do that. Just like, oh, that website doesn't exist. Google.com, don't know where that is.
I'm sorry, I'm going to try to log into one more insecure portal and see. I should probably just make one that automatically does this because like I spend more time looking for unsecure websites on
Just
the
make
show.
your own insecure website.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
should. My bird.
I
one,
think
two,
there's
three.
there's like a lot of intentionally vulnerable websites. I did an article on Nullbyte a while back on those.
I should know them. Hey! Oh my god, that was it. Wait, no. Don't take my victory away from me. Go get back here.
Scroll up.
I'm trying. Whoa. So you can see the Raspberry Pi is also a little just stressed.
So, ooh, what is that?
We have the contents of our actual requests.
Oh, I know.
So we can see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Style sheets. We can see the computer that sent it. So we can see that this was sent from a Mac OS computer. So that's
Nice.
really useful. So even just sniffing this, we're learning information about just, oh, here we go. We're getting login gateway. I really want to find that password. You guys, you have no idea how much this is bothering me. But okay, all right. Well, the point here wasn't to show you guys how to capture passwords on a Raspberry Pi on a network. We're so far into the weeds now. I might as well just...
But no, I think this is a beautiful demonstration of the kinds of things that a Raspberry Pi would be great for. Like I was mentioning at the beginning, like a kind of network implant.
Mm-hmm.
Because like $35, you know, I did discuss like the peripherals add a little on top of that, but still like for all intents and purposes, that is a disposable item at a certain point.
Wait, is this base 64? This looks like base 60. Okay, I bet my password's base 64. Well, good on you, middle school. Congratulations for using base 64 to protect my friggin' password. I'm just bitter because I really wanted to see it on the screen. But as you can see,
plain text password.
we're doing this on a $35 computer. So I'm gonna stop this nonsense with Bettercap. I'm gonna release the network.
Okay.
Everybody else on this network is gonna be very happy to know that
Yeah.
the Raspberry Pi is no longer their router. I'm sure as soon as we check our messages, we're gonna see a bunch of people being like, the internet's slow. It's like, sorry, we're using a $30 computer to route the whole network.
So we're getting low on time, but could we demonstrate real quick like the Wi-Fi hacking? Like what would that look like?
Oh,
like,
sure, whatever. Let's
The
do it.
monitor mode.
Yeah, let's attack some stuff with Wi-Fi. All right, so
Do you have to do anything special to put the card in monitor?
Sure
mode?
do. All right, so I mean, it's really no different from doing this in any other
Yeah,
way.
you do
Now-
4 equal
well,
signs, press enter, all the Wi-Fi is hacked.
plus. I want the font bigger, sir. All right, so ifconfig. That's wrong. ifconfig. That's right. And we can see we have it's the default wireless card. It's WLAN 0.
Yeah, and that's basically
By the
all
way,
it
we
is.
were doing Wi-Fi hacking because Bettercap also does all the attacks I'm about
Oh.
to show you.
Okay.
But if you want to run an attack that I think is great for just grabbing handshakes and then being able to try to crack one, let's try that. So we'll do airmon -ng start. Whoa. This keyboard's very sticky. WLAN 0.
Yeah.
And then we should have it put into monitor mode. So if I type ifconfig again, we can see it there. It's now WLAN 0 mod. We can type IPA as well, or IWconfig. They all work. So WLAN 0 mod is the name of our wireless card now. It's in monitor mode. This crashed before when I didn't have a proper power supply when I ran the next command. So if I want to see all the stuff that's in the area, then I can type arrow dump ng. But if I want to attack stuff and I don't care about scanning first, I can type bside ng. So let's type bside ng. And where's my phone? I'm going to create a network, and let's just hack it. Why not, right?
Okay. Yeah, sounds like a plan.
All right, so I'm going to create a hotspot. It's going to be called, I don't know, testnet. And the password is going to be password123. Cool. So let's see if we can hack this password. Now, what we'll need to do for this is I'm going to connect my computer to this hotspot.
Okay.
And we're going to use the Raspberry Pi to kick it off and grab the password. So let's say that we download a password list from the internet. I'm just going to nano password.txt, passwords.txt.
Oh, does that come downloaded by default? Oh.
No,
yeah.
I mean, I imagine
Gotcha.
there are definitely default passwords here. I just don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So blah, 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 and there's lots.
And definitely...
Password. Oops.
My password.
Okay, so now we got some passwords in here. We saved it. So that's what we need. We need a handshake and a password list. So we could go to GitHub and download it. I don't really have time on the stream, so we're not going to do that. But our goal here is to try to brute force us from this big long list of passwords, which in fact is just like 8. But this could be a bunch. And again, don't stress out this poor Raspberry Pi. Don't give it like a million. It'll do it, but it's going to get really hot. So we're going to do bside ng, WLAN 0 mod, and it's going to start attacking and hopefully not crash.
Okay.
If it crashes, then that means your power supply is weak.
Yeah.
So it's going to scan, and I'm going to also on my computer just like ping something or reboot something or whatever just to create some traffic. And it's going to go and it's individually going to attack everything it sees nearby because this program is a beast.
thing.
Yeah, so now it's attacking just absolutely everything.
So to be clear, always make sure you have permission to do this on the network.
Yes, so this tool is dangerous as hell. And I should make it very clear that running this in the way that I just did only works because we are shooting in a basement.
It's thing. Is that your test network?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're fine because there's nothing in range that isn't ours. But if you are doing this in a densely populated area, you need to do a scan first and identify what network you're actually trying to attack. Now here, if I want to be responsible, because Michael's complaining about responsibility.
Well, I think also an important note on the Raspberry Pi, if you're going to use the internal Wi-Fi, is that it's just like the little PCB antenna. So you don't have the capability to attach a better like directional antenna or any kind of external antenna for that matter. So it does have pretty limited range. Like you're not going to be hacking an entire house with this. Like
right. So this is without modification. This is a pretty not the most powerful of antennas.
Yeah.
So we can only see like our networks upstairs and downstairs, and that's about it. So now I've done a quick scan and I've identified that our testnet is on channel 11. So now I've added the flag C11 to only attack things on channel 11. So hopefully it will see it. Yes, it does. So it's going to finish just absolutely menacing our upstairs network for a second. And then after it moves on from that, I'm going to keep requesting this web page in Cantonese. Oh, God. Why did I do that? Now my entire Google is in Cantonese.
Oh, that's always a joy.
But yeah, if I just keep the traffic going. Yeah, okay. Oh my God, we can stop. Cool. Look at that. We got a handshake for testnet. So again, using a Raspberry Pi, we've gotten a handshake.
Nice.
So now that should be stored in a file called, I type ls, we should see wpa.cap. That's where the handshake's stored. So let's do aircrack, ng, and then we're going to do /w passwords.txt,
Nice.
and then we'll just do the handshake, so wpa.cap.
Cool.
and then it'll give us some options. Which one do we want to hack? Well, we're going to select option number 2. There we go. We got the password from our huge list of passwords. Set out of 8 keys, it was able to guess the right one. Computers are amazing.
Such a lead hacker.
Yeah, so all right, I guess that's what we can do for today. But yeah, this has been just an example of how quickly we got started hacking on a Raspberry Pi. Just by downloading the Kali Linux image and then putting it into the Raspberry Pi, regardless if you have a 3, 3B+, 3B, or a 4, all of them will work. We were testing out the 3B Plus today, but we were able to get its wireless card to not only attack a network from the inside and basically see the contents of people's communication, but also attack a network from the outside and get the password to the network. And we did all of that in how long?
Like 50 minutes?
50 minutes.
Yeah.
So seriously, if you're interested in hacking, the Raspberry Pi is a really, really good way to get started. And there's plenty of documentation if you get confused or if you otherwise need help with getting the hardware working. So I recommend if you guys are interested in hacking, you have a Raspberry Pi sitting around, consider the fact that its wireless card is a lot more durable and robust than most people think, and it's able to do some things that traditionally you just need to buy a much more expensive wireless network adapter to do. So for the same cost, you could get both the computer that's hacking and the wireless network adapter that's compatible all in one package.
Yeah, and that's absolutely why. If you're a beginner and you want to get into hacking, like, buy a Raspberry Pi. Just do yourself a favor. That's the best place to start. It's not too expensive, and then you'll get a better idea of this. Is this a hobby or a career that I want to pursue, or is this kind of like, oh, that was an interesting thing to do one weekend, now I'm gonna, move on.
Yep. All right, so that's all we have today. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Hacking with Friends. Per always, we have to thank Varonis for making sure that this broadcast is a thing. And if you guys are interested in seeing how the professionals stop hackers like us, who inevitably will get into a system, you should check out the PowerShell workshop as well as the AD workshop, and also some of the great attack labs they have, which demonstrate just that.
Awesome. Sounds really cool.
Yeah. All right, guys. So make sure to check out our other broadcasts. We are live every Tuesday and Friday. So if you haven't seen the various episodes that we've already done and you're interested in seeing them, check out the Security Forward YouTube channel at youtube.com/securityforward. That's securityfwd. And you'll find both this and also all the other streams that we've done saved there. You can watch them at any time. So
yeah,
great. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
See you
Bye.
next time.